Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Thanks to Bai Xiaochun, the trial by fire for Blood Master had been thrown into utter chaos. In the endless world of blood, only poor Jia Lai had been struck with such ill luck, but now, in the blood wasteland, even Song Junwan and Shui Mei were shocked by what was happening. Everyone was going mad, and all of it was because of Bai Xiaochun. It wasn't that Bai Xiaochun wanted it that way. He was just as nervous as everyone else. But his undying live forever technique was in full operation, and because of the rapid growth of his fleshly body power, Bai Xiaochun's berserk ghosts increased in number yet again. The power of 8 berserk ghosts caused cracking sounds to ring out from inside of him. Even as his energy surged, Song Ke and the others gritted their teeth and joined the group that was chasing Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun was getting more nervous than ever, and his mind was racing as he tried to decide what to do. Finally, he howled, "Song Ke, go attack the person who got the first key. If you get that one, and I consume the rest, then Shui Mei will never get onto the ancient blood path. It's called divide and conquer. If you're focused on attacking them, they'll have to focus on defending, and I can just eat the keys. If you guys get your hands on the first key, I'll consume all the others. If you don't get it, then I'll make sure to leave the last 2. That way, we'll definitely come out on top, and they'll be exterminated. That's my plan. Ha ha ha, we'll definitely win that way." The more Bai Xiaochun spoke, the more he made sense. Song Ke and the others were shaken. They were no fools, and as soon as they heard Bai Xiaochun's plan, their eyes glittered. As for Shui Mei's Dharma protectors, their faces fell, especially the one who had acquired the first key, a middle-aged man whose complexion was now as pale as death. Shui Mei, who was completely tangled up in her fight with Song Junwan, was now getting more nervous. "Night Crypt, are you looking to die?" she shouted. As for Song Junwan, she chuckled charmingly. "We do things Night Crypt's way," she declared. Although her smile was lovely, her attacks were incisive, and she immediately began to push Shui Mei back across the battlefield, who could do nothing to stop her. In fact, she couldn't even come up with a plan to deal with Bai Xiaochun. It was an anxious moment. Song Ke and the others gritted their teeth, ceased chasing Bai Xiaochun, and shot toward the Dharma protector with the first key. Shui Mei's other Dharma protectors were then forced to cease chasing Bai Xiaochun and offer defense. Immediately, chaotic fighting broke out. Booms echoed out, and the brilliant light of divine abilities and magical techniques rose up into the air. At long last, Bai Xiaochun was able to breathe a sigh of relief. "It's a good thing I reacted so quickly, otherwise I would have been in way too much danger. There are people with higher cultivation bases and powerful magical treasures, and some of them are secret experts. If they gang up on me, how am I supposed to fight them?" Bai Xiaochun immediately began to flee, and yet, in that very moment, his pupils constricted. Although no one was visible in the area, he unhesitatingly unleashed the mountain-shaking bash, gathering a huge amount of power and unleashing it in an explosive burst that pushed him forward at top speed. Even as he shot forward, a blood-colored hand suddenly appeared out of thin air and unleashed a stream of 30-meter-long sword chi. "Ee," someone said. An old man stepped out of thin air, a man with a long violet robe and age spots on his face. Sweat was pouring down Bai Xiaochun's face. The sensation of imminent danger he had just experienced was one of the most intense he had felt so far. If he hadn't dodged at just the right time, that attack would have stabbed into his forehead. "Xiaoqing," he said, eyes shining with vigilance. This old man was another of the 3 people Song Junwan had mentioned, the same old man who could supposedly break through from Foundation establishment at any time. Xiaoqing smiled and said, "I've been in secluded meditation for many years, and just came out. Even still, I've heard a lot of stories about you." Although he was indeed a Foundation establishment cultivator, he was unlike the others. If he reached core formation, he would definitely become a prime elder. When he looked at Bai Xiaochun felt more on guard than ever. The man's gaze felt like 2 sharp swords. His spiritual seas are just a hair away from reaching full crystallization. If I used everything in my repertoire, I could probably fight him. But considering how limited I am right now, I'm no match for him. Without the slightest hesitation, Bai Xiaochun began to flee. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave, junior brother Night Crypt?" Xiaoqing smiled and took a step forward with speed that matched Bai Xiaochun's. Then he waved his sleeve, and a stream of blood-colored sword chi appeared and slashed down toward Bai Xiaochun. "What crap are you spewing?" Bai Xiaochun asked. "If I don't leave, then what else am I supposed to do? Sit around and wait for you to kill me? Did your cultivation cause you brain damage or something?" With that, he blurred into motion, avoiding the blood sword. Xiaoqing's smile went stiff. Throughout all the times he had fought people in his life, no one had ever spoken to him like this before. Expression turning grim, he let out a cold harumph and said, "Ill-mannered cur. When I get my hands on you, I'm going to rip out your tongue. Let's see what quips you come up with then." Chuckling coldly, he took another step forward in pursuit. At the same time, his right hand flashed with an incantation gesture, summoning a stream of blood qi that shot toward Bai Xiaochun. Despite his anxiety, Bai Xiaochun was still trying to come up with a plan as he flew along. "Seems you really did suffer from brain damage while you were cultivating. If I had no tongue, I might not be able to speak, but I could still use divine will to say something." As they sped through the blood wasteland, Xiaoqing attacked multiple times. On a few occasions, his magical techniques actually hit home, and yet, Bai Xiaochun's terrifyingly powerful fleshly body defenses left Xiaoqing in shock. With Xiaoqing's current battle prowess, he could dominate any other Foundation establishment cultivator. And yet, Bai Xiaochun was incredibly fast and abnormally tough. In fact, as the chase went on, he kept going even faster. His reserves of spiritual power were simply unbelievable. How could mid-mortal Dao Foundation establishment possibly unleash such power? Xiaoqing's eyes flickered. The battle prowess being put on display by Bai Xiaochun in the blood wasteland was completely and utterly shocking to him. Even more bizarre than that, though, was the situation with the blood-colored keys. If there was only one strange oddity with Bai Xiaochun, then it would be much easier to determine the cause, and then ascertain a method to deal with the situation. But with so many strange things happening, it was hard to decide where to start, and very easy to get going in the wrong direction. Xiaoqing's eyes narrowed as he once again gave chase. As for Bai Xiaochun, he was grumbling and complaining to himself. It felt like Xiaoqing was stuck to him with glue. No matter how Bai Xiaochun tried to shake him, he would continue to pursue him. Were it not for the fact that Bai Xiaochun had an incredible fleshly body, and was actually at Heaven Dao Foundation establishment, he would never have been able to sustain the speed he had been keeping up so far. Just wait until I make a major breakthrough with my fleshly body. Then I'll definitely show that old fogey how awesome I am. Bai Xiaochun gritted his teeth. By now, he actually looked forward to the arrival of the 10th hour. Now that he already had the power of 8 berserk ghosts, for some reason, it didn't feel good enough. He actually wanted to consume that key and solidify the power of his berserk ghosts. Time passed. Eventually, the 7th and 8th hours passed, and the 9th hour approached. As expected, a dot of blood-colored light appeared, which shot toward Bai Xiaochun's forehead. In the blink of an eye, it was only a few inches away from him. He didn't pause for even a moment as he sped on, and the red dot instantly sank into his forehead. Although bright red light initially filled the area, it rapidly dimmed. At the same time, the second level of the Undying Heavenly King was in full operation. Rumbling sounds exploded out from within his body as the energy of 9 berserk ghosts formed. Xiaoqing's eyes widened as he sensed the growing power within Bai Xiaochun. There are many strange things about him. Now that he's absorbed that key, he's probably even more confident in fighting me. Xiaoqing closed in at top speed, and yet, before he could get close, Bai Xiaochun looked back, eyes flickering with the desire to do battle. At almost the exact same instant, his fleshly body power skyrocketed. "Xiaoqing, you old fogey, do you dare to fight with me, Night Crypt?" Bai Xiaochun waved his right sleeve and pointed at Xiaoqing, as if challenging him to a duel. "So, you're finally confident that you can fight me? Fine, I'll give you a chance." Xiaoqing took a step forward, and the power of his cultivation base erupted. "Alright, Xiaoqing, here I come." Bai Xiaochun roared, eyes bursting with the will to fight. However, even as he faced Xiaoqing, he began to speed backward. Drawing upon the incredible power of his fleshly body, he unleashed even greater speed than he had in the past. Xiaoqing's jaw dropped, and his eyes went wide. Bai Xiaochun was letting out a battle cry, and yet simultaneously fleeing off into the distance. Completely shameless. Xiaoqing howled. His eyes burned with flames of rage, and yet the slight delay had put a huge distance between him and Bai Xiaochun. At that point, Bai Xiaochun stopped backing up. Turning his back on Xiaoqing, he fled at even greater speed than before. "I want to fight you," he called out, "but can't at the moment. Just wait a bit. Once the 11th hour arrives, and I've completed 9 berserk ghosts, then I'll wipe the floor with you, you old fart." Bai Xiaochun didn't feel that he was being shameless at all. Instead, he felt that he had just out-strategized Xiaoqing. "Not even the least bit confident in being able to fight me? What kind of Dao do you cultivate, Night Crypt?" I can't believe that someone as useless as you exists in the bloodstream sect. I think I need to step in for the sect and do some housecleaning. Xiaoqing was incensed. First, he had been ridiculed, then challenged to fight, and then, his opponent had simply run away. More killing intent than ever could be seen in Xiaoqing's eyes, and as he gave chase, he unleashed the power of his cultivation base, pushing himself forward with greater speed than ever. However, Bai Xiaochun was simply too fast. With the explosive acceleration provided by his fleshly body power, he managed to stay in the lead all the way through the 9th and 10th hours. Soon, the 11th hour was rapidly approaching. When it came, the 6th key appeared in the form of a red dot, right in front of Bai Xiaochun's forehead. It only took the briefest of moments for it to fly into him. Rumbling sounds echoed out from within Bai Xiaochun's body, and he began to tremble visibly. His undying heavenly king was in full operation, and under the seemingly boundless addition provided by the blood-colored key, his fleshly body continued to increase in power. The expression provided by his mask was one of complete and utter ferocity as he threw his head back and howled at the top of his lungs. As he did, 8 berserk ghosts appeared behind him, and then, a 9th. The appearance of the 9th berserk ghost caused Bai Xiaochun's fleshly body strength to be completely incited, sending matchlessly powerful qi and blood power surging heavenward. Roar! Blue veins bulged out on Bai Xiaochun's face. In only a handful of hours, his fleshly body power had undergone a dramatic increase, so much so that it was difficult for him to endure. The 9 berserk ghosts behind him were howling, and even as Xiaoqing closed in, Bai Xiaochun prodded them with the power of his will, and they merged together. That new berserk ghost was vastly larger than the others, almost as if it were a new form of life. It was now pure white, with vicious-looking bone spurs sticking out all over it. It had sharp claws, and radiated a power that seemed capable of crushing heaven and earth. Strangely, though, it had no head. It was a headless heavenly demon body, incomplete but shockingly powerful nonetheless. When it formed, Bai Xiaochun howled, and seemingly infinite fleshly body power caused a tempest to spring out all around him. Within moments, it was a tornado connecting heaven and earth, an enormous, spinning vortex. Xiaoqing stopped in place, his eyes widening. For the first time, a very serious expression could be seen on his face. Not only was Bai Xiaochun stronger, but the image of the headless heavenly demon made him seem completely different than before. Alright Xiaoqing, come on, let's fight. Although Bai Xiaochun didn't look any different physically, the sensation he gave off was that he was growing rapidly. Having absorbed the blood qi from 5 of the keys, he suddenly felt that if he didn't unleash some of the power immediately, he would explode. No such sensation had come from the previous 4 keys. But with the 5th key, he suddenly felt explosively powerful. Even as he called out, he took a step forward, and massive rumbling sounds could be heard as he shot toward Xiaoqing in a bashing motion. The heavenly demon image behind him made the same bashing attack, except with power exponentially greater than Bai Xiaochun's. It was such an explosive outburst that it seemed capable of bashing anything and everything to bits. Even the air twisted and distorted as he bore down on Xiaoqing. Just when Xiaoqing was about to dodge out of the way, the charging Bai Xiaochun suddenly extended his right hand, and a powerful gravitational force sprang out from his palm and seemed to latch onto Xiaoqing's neck. Then the hand transformed into a fist. The air vibrated as powerful fluctuations spread out, locking down the entire area and making it impossible for Xiaoqing to even move. Xiaoqing's eyes widened, and he roared as his hands flashed with an incantation gesture. Blinding, blood-colored light instantly spread out, transforming into a huge, crimson greatsword which slashed out toward Bai Xiaochun. Although all of this takes some time to describe, it happened in the blink of an eye. A deafening boom echoed out in all directions as Bai Xiaochun's blow landed on Xiaoqing. Instantly, the two of them flew apart until they were 3,000 meters away from each other. The ground was shattered and destroyed, and a huge blast of wind rippled out, shaking everything. The blood sword shattered, and the heavenly demon body was split in two. Xiaoqing tumbled through the air, and blood sprayed out of Bai Xiaochun's mouth. When the dust settled, Xiaoqing was off in the distance, his face ashen, his eyes shining brightly as he looked at Bai Xiaochun, who was currently wiping the blood from his mouth. Bai Xiaochun had vented more than half of the energy he had built up, and no longer felt like he was going to explode. At the same time, his fleshly body power seemed to be growing even greater as he stood there staring at Xiaoqing. Happy with the fight so far, Xiaoqing? Bai Xiaochun said with a twisted smile, his eyes completely bloodshot. Xiaoqing didn't respond. The sensation of danger he'd just felt from Bai Xiaochun's explosive attack came partly because of his fleshly body power, and partly because there was something else about Bai Xiaochun that he found completely disconcerting. He's definitely still hiding something, he thought. Although he was still confident that he could kill Bai Xiaochun, he knew that he would most likely end up seriously injured in the process. By this point in the trial by fire, most of the others had reached the point where they felt it was necessary to fight to the death. However, Xiaoqing knew about Shui Mei's secret plan, and that everything that was happening now was just a smokescreen. Therefore, he wasn't ready to risk his life. There was also another reason to make such a decision. Xiaoqing glanced over at an area some distance away from Bai Xiaochun, and then turned to leave without uttering even another word. Bai Xiaochun did nothing to stop him, and in fact, felt a bit more relaxed to see him leaving. With that, he turned and looked off in the same direction Xiaoqing just had, his eyes shining with piercing light. "You've been shadowing me for quite a while, elder brother. Why don't you show your face?" Laughter echoed out as the air distorted, as if someone were using a magical item to distort space itself. A gaunt, middle-aged man appeared, a hunchback who, from the moment Bai Xiaochun laid eyes on him, gave off the sensation that he was no less powerful than Xiaoqing. Bai Xiaochun had seen this man before among Song Junwan's Dharma protectors. However, nobody, not even Song Ke, had seemed to notice that he was concealing the true power of his cultivation base. He was one of the aces Song Junwan had up her sleeve, someone similar to Xiaoqing. Bai Xiaochun's eyes widened a bit. From what he could tell, this man was a big reason why Xiaoqing had fled just now. "I am your humble servant Song Zhen," the man said in a raspy voice. He looked Bai Xiaochun up and down, still a bit unconvinced that he was worthy of being one of Song Junwan's Dharma protectors. From what he could tell, there was something else going on between Song Junwan and Nightcrypt. That was the only explanation for why she would bring him along. "I'm no gambler," he said slowly and calmly. "Nor do I wish to be exterminated by the wind in this place. I like things to be all sewn up. Soon, the 13th hour will be upon us. Let me have the 7th blood-colored key, and I won't make a move on you." Bai Xiaochun thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, as soon as the 7th key appears, I'll back up. But don't forget, those villainous keys love to chase me. Whether or not you can grab it will be up to you. If you're slow, then I don't want to hear any complaints." Song Zhen gave him an empty smile, and then said, "Don't worry, junior brother Nightcrypt. As long as you don't intentionally try to absorb the key, then as soon as it appears, I'll grab it. However, if you do make a move on it, don't blame me for flipping out. Why don't you sit off to the side and meditate while we wait for the 13th hour?" Bai Xiaochun felt good about the idea. Although the keys were very helpful for his cultivation, the Bloodstream sect in general was a holy land for his undying codex. As far as he was concerned, there was no need to get in a dangerous fight with this person over one single key. In terms of the threat of being the losing team and getting exterminated, Bai Xiaochun actually wasn't worried about it at all. After all the strange things that had been going on inside the body of the blood ancestor, he was quite certain that, regardless of who else was killed, he definitely wouldn't be. Feeling very much at ease, he sat down cross-legged to meditate. Keeping his guard up in case Song Zhen did something unexpected, he made some adjustments to his cultivation base, slowly recovering and, at the same time, increasing his fleshly body power. Song Zhen also sat down to meditate and wait for time to pass. Song Zhen didn't seem too worried that a fight might break out between the two of them, and Bai Xiaochun was too preoccupied to worry about it either. Time passed. Soon, the 11th and 12th hours had passed, and the 13th hour was upon them. Song Zhen's eyes opened. Rising to his feet, he edged a bit closer to Bai Xiaochun, and his right hand began to flicker with light. He stared at the air in front of Bai Xiaochun, completely and utterly confident that when the 7th key appeared, he would be able to grab it. Even if Nightcrypt tried to back out on their deal and tried to absorb the key, considering how close he was, Song Zhen was supremely confident that, with his own profound cultivation base, along with his innate speed that even the Prime Elders had praised, he would definitely be able to grab it. Time inched along. There were 10 breaths of time left. 6, 3. Finally, the 13th hour arrived. Song Zhen threw his head back and laughed loudly as his right hand blurred into motion, leaving behind afterimages as it shot forward. A huge blast of power erupted out which he didn't even bother to shield Bai Xiaochun from. However, at that exact moment, a bright red light suddenly shot out from inside Bai Xiaochun. The 7th key had appeared, but not in front of him. Contrary to what anyone might have imagined, it appeared inside of him. Even Bai Xiaochun was completely taken aback. Before he could do anything, the key was inside of him, and the blood qi was coursing through his body. Song Jian's jaw dropped. Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide. You really can't blame me this time. It appeared right inside my stomach, he shrieked. Song Jian's face flickered, and he suddenly let out an intense howl of rage. Night Crypt. As Bai Xiaochun backed up, his undying live forever technique exploded into action, absorbing all of the blood qi from the blood-colored key and causing intense, thunderous rumbling to fill him. Meanwhile, as the 9 berserk ghosts behind him roared and howled, a 10th berserk ghost began to take shape, causing Bai Xiaochun's fleshly body power to skyrocket. Of the 7 keys to be had in the Blood Wasteland, 6 had been absorbed by Bai Xiaochun. By now, Bai Xiaochun could clearly sense the fluctuations emanating from the first of those keys, some distance away. It almost seemed as if all 7 keys were required to form a whole. However, there was little time for Bai Xiaochun to think about that as he sped backward. Song Jian's rage had reached an indescribable level. With a completely ferocious expression, he howled and shot toward Bai Xiaochun in a beam of light. At the same time, he performed an incantation gesture with his right hand, summoning a blood-colored greatsword, which he hefted as he closed in. Then he slashed the sword out in an attack, backing it with the full cultivation base power of the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment. The sword rapidly grew as it cut through the air, until it was fully 30 meters long. The air distorted, and the sky filled with rumbling sounds as the sword light slashed toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun's scalp was tingling so hard it felt like it might explode. There was no time to ponder the situation. His hands flashed in a double-handed incantation gesture, and he called upon both his fleshly body and the power of his cultivation base, 3 crystallized spiritual seas. Intense ripples spread out as the undying live forever technique flew into motion, and true undying blood swirled out into the open. That undying blood almost instantly expanded into the shape of a huge sword, which Bai Xiaochun grabbed with both hands and raised up to meet Song Jian's sword. Boom! Blood sprayed out of Bai Xiaochun's mouth as he was flung backward. Song Jian was also shaken, and his qi and blood vibrated inside of him. Just as he was about to make another attack, though, Bai Xiaochun wiped the blood off of his lips, grinned viciously, and then waved his right finger at Song Jian. Human controlling grand magic. Even in this critical moment, Bai Xiaochun didn't call upon any of the magical techniques of the Spirit Stream sect. He had created the human controlling grand magic himself, and despite the fact that it was incomplete, it was still freakish in many ways. As soon as he unleashed it, Song Jian lurched to a stop amidst creaking sounds. Without even thinking about it, he unleashed the full power of his cultivation base, whereupon all of his clothing was ripped to shreds. Every scrap of cloth covering his body was destroyed, leaving him completely exposed to the breeze. Song Jian's jaw dropped, and his eyes widened. Looking down at himself, he suddenly let out a shrill scream that filled almost the entire blood wasteland. Night Crypt, I'm gonna kill you. Trembling with madness, he threw another set of clothing on and prepared to attack again. However, in the brief moment that had passed, Bai Xiaochun had unleashed explosive speed, and was now quite a distance away. Bai Xiaochun looked anxious and miserable. For some reason, this Blood Master trial by fire did not seem to be going at all the way a trial by fire should. It was like everyone was out to get him. 2 more hours. I only have to last for 2 more hours. Gritting his teeth, he took a deep breath. It was at that point that he realized that the first blood-colored key was actually getting closer to him. Oh come on, no, he thought, his scalp tingling. It hadn't been easy to get everyone else to go after that key. Although Song Jian was chasing him, everyone else was now in a killing mood as they fought over that one key. Go away, don't even get near me. Tears were welling up in his eyes. Even if he could advance his undying heavenly king by absorbing that key, he wasn't willing to put his life on the line, especially considering that everyone would try to kill him if he did. Shivering, he changed directions and sped away from the key. However, even as he did, the key suddenly sped up dramatically, to the point where Bai Xiaochun was sure he could hear it whizzing through the air. Don't get near me. He pushed forward with even more speed. Enough time passed for an incense stick to burn as he shot through the blood wasteland, Song Jian hot on his tail. Then, up ahead, a blood-colored pillar of light appeared, heading directly toward him. It was none other than the blood-colored key. No, he wailed. It was the very key which had first appeared, and following it were a dozen or so Dharma protectors, all moving at top speed. The key had originally been acquired by one of the Shuimei's Dharma protectors. However, just as Bai Xiaochun had planned, the rest of the people in the trial by fire had been fighting over it, and it had changed hands numerous times since. As the end of the trial by fire approached, Song Ke acquired it. And yet, for some odd reason, just after he grabbed it, it surged with power and flew out of his hand, then shot off into the distance. The other Dharma protectors were shocked, but there was little time to consider the matter. They all stopped fighting amongst themselves and shot after the key. That was when they saw Bai Xiaochun being chased by the enraged Song Zhen. The key sped up, heading rapidly toward Bai Xiaochun, within the blink of an eye, and before he could do anything, the key shot into his forehead. Night Crypt. Song Ke howled, his eyes completely bloodshot. Night Crypt, don't do it. Damn it, Night Crypt, why you? All of the Dharma protectors were going mad, both those on Shui Mei's team and Song Junwan's. Moments ago, they had been fighting each other, but now their eyes were completely bloodshot as murderous auras erupted because of Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun was trembling on the verge of tears. This was not how trials by fire were supposed to go. That was exactly how Song Junwan and Shui Mei felt as well. Although they were both still fighting up in the air, their hearts were filled with amazement at the absurdity of the situation. They almost weren't sure what to do now that Bai Xiaochun had absorbed the final key. A moment passed, and they stopped fighting, then turned and began to speed toward Bai Xiaochun. This isn't a trial by fire for Bloodmaster, this is a trial by fire to kill me. Gritting his teeth, he immediately began to flee. The last bit of hope for everyone in the Blood Wasteland had just been absorbed by Bai Xiaochun. There were now no keys left. According to the laws of this world, none of the Dharma protectors should be able to step onto the ancient blood path. However, what was most terrifying of all was the possibility that both teams would be classified as having lost. If that were true, then when the 14th hour ended, all of them would be wiped out of existence. The culprit who had caused the catastrophe was none other than Bai Xiaochun. The hatred both sides felt for him was completely indescribable, and many of them were so maddened that the only thing they wanted to do was kill Bai Xiaochun before they were exterminated by the world. At the moment, nothing mattered. Not the sect, not their future, not the potential punishments they might face. They disregarded all of that and embraced the desire to kill. Rumbling could be heard as three cultivators immediately drew upon powerful magical treasures. Multicolored light rose up from magical techniques, and booms could be heard as divine abilities were unleashed. All forms of rage and madness were poured out upon Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun bolted into motion like a rabbit whose tail had been stepped on. As he fled, some people got the strange feeling that Night Crypt was used to doing this. Every move he made seemed designed to avoid the divine abilities and magical techniques, and in fact, he only seemed to move faster and faster. Of course, the reason why Bai Xiaochun seemed so familiar with what was happening was that back in the Spirit Stream sect, he had often ended up in such situations because of the catastrophes he had wrought. By now, he was very familiar with what it was like to be chased, and in fact, reacted to it on an instinctive level. Even as he fled, rumbling sounds filled him as the undying live forever technique continued to operate. The blood chi from the keys caused 10 berserk ghosts to appear, which rapidly merged together. As they fused and grew clear, his aura grew more powerful. After enough time passed for half an incense stick to burn, he suddenly stopped in place as an intense rumbling sound echoed out from within him. In that very moment, the 10 berserk ghosts completely merged together. Intense howling could be heard as the ghosts became one. "It's the 10 ghosts' heavenly demon body," he murmured, a strange light gleaming in his eyes as a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering energy erupted from inside of him. The volume of the undying heavenly king was divided into 5 different body types and 4 levels. The body types were the mammoth body, berserk ghost body, heavenly demon body, asura body, and finally the heavenly king body. In terms of the levels, 10 mammoths became 1 berserk ghost, 10 berserk ghosts became 1 heavenly demon, 10 demons became 1 asura, and 10 asuras became 1 heavenly king. Very few people in the cultivation world could fully cultivate the undying heavenly king. The resources required were incredible, such that most sects could never dream of sustaining it. If Bai Xiaochun had stayed behind in the Spirit Stream sect, it might not have been impossible for him to cultivate to the level of the heavenly demon body, but at the very least, it would have taken him a 60-year cycle, and would have required much in terms of luck and fortune. But, because of how things had played out in the Bloodstream sect, that time had been significantly reduced. Furthermore, because of the 7 blood-colored keys, he was now already at the peak of the 2nd level of the undying heavenly king. At that level, 10 berserk ghosts merged together to form the heavenly demon body. Rumble. Each breath that Bai Xiaochun took as he stood there seemed to fill the entire world with intense rumbling sounds. Behind him appeared a pure white heavenly demon, its head thrown back as it roared. Ripples spread out that could topple mountains and drain seas, and the power radiating from Bai Xiaochun swept out in all directions, creating a tornado that stretched high up into the heavens. Massive wind battered the other cultivators, all of whom were forced to stop in place, their expressions flickering with shock. Dread could be seen in the eyes of Song Zhen and Xiao Qing. Don't tell me that's the body refinement magic of Lesser Marsh Peak. Heavens! That energy! Can Foundation establishment cultivators even produce something like that? Just how many secrets does Night Crypt have buried inside of him? Even as gasps rang out, killing intent flickered in Song Zhen's eyes, and he took a step forward, his right hand flashing in an incantation gesture. In response, blood chi surged out to form a stream of crimson sword chi that shot directly toward the tornado. In almost the same instant that he made his move, Song Ke and the other cultivators gritted their teeth and attacked as well. In the blink of an eye, numerous divine abilities and magical items caused multicolored light to blast toward the tornado. Massive rumbling sounds echoed out, and the ground quaked. The sky trembled, and the tornado distorted momentarily before exploding. Bai Xiaochun was revealed, blood oozing out of the corners of his mouth as the heavenly demon roared. At the same time, killing intent flickered in his eyes. We're all in the same sect together, so I didn't want to start fighting and killing. I didn't absorb those keys on purpose. You people are pushing things too far. We still have an incense stick's worth of time before the 14th hour is up. Let's see whether you people can wipe me out in that amount of time, or whether I can wipe you out. Bai Xiaochun seemed like he was on the verge of unleashing complete carnage. He had been in the bloodstream sect for years now, and after mingling with such ferocious cultivators for so long, he had come to understand a truth about them. The only way to get them to listen to reason was to be more brutal than they were. Even as the words left his mouth, he burst into motion, appearing directly in front of Song Zhen. Song Zhen's pupils constricted, and his hands turned bright red as he struck out at Bai Xiaochun. Back off! Bai Xiaochun growled, unleashing the mountain-shaking bash. Song Zhen's face fell as Bai Xiaochun bashed into him, a boom rang out, and blood oozed out of the corners of his mouth as he was shoved out of the way. Bai Xiaochun flew past him to the rest of the dozen or so Dharma protectors, where his right hand clenched into a fist. When he struck out, the full power of the heavenly demon body was unleashed. That was the power of 10 berserk ghosts, and 100 giant mammoths. It was a level of fleshly body power that any Foundation establishment cultivator would find unbelievable. A sonic boom echoed out as the fist slammed into a late Foundation establishment cultivator. His eyes immediately went wide as he realized he was powerless to defend himself. In the blink of an eye, his bones were completely shattered, and blood sprayed out of his mouth as he tumbled backward like a kite with its string cut. Even as a scream rang out from the man, Bai Xiaochun took another step forward. By this point, the magical techniques and divine abilities from the surrounding cultivators were closing in. There were 6 blood swords, a blood dragon, and 3 ordinary flying swords. As they neared, Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath and then stepped forward to appear in front of another Foundation establishment cultivator. His hand snaked out and latched onto the man, whose eyes widened with terror as Bai Xiaochun viciously head-butted him. A boom could be heard, and then the Foundation establishment cultivator screamed as he was lifted up into the air to block 3 blood swords and 2 flying swords. As for the other incoming swords, they all hit Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun trembled slightly, but otherwise seemed unaffected. In fact, his left hand even shot out to grab the magical blood dragon. When his fingers crushed down onto it, it shattered. However, at almost the exact same instant, the besiegers attacked again. This time, Yang Hongwu unleashed his incense, and Zhang Yunshan called upon his powerful magical treasure. Song Ke was in the group as well. Bai Xiaochun snorted coldly, and once again used the mountain-shaking bash. He was like an ancient wild beast that dodged the incoming attacks and closed in on Song Ke. Blood sprayed out of Song Ke's mouth, along with a choked cry. He was at the peak of 8 earth-string tide flows, and had life-saving magical items, and it was only because of those things that he managed to come out relatively unharmed. Then he looked on in shock as Bai Xiaochun borrowed the momentum of the mountain-shaking bash to speed past him. Trying to run? Xiao Qing said, eyes flickering with killing intent. Just when he was about to follow, Bai Xiaochun suddenly looked over his shoulder and chuckled coldly. Who said anything about running? Without any hesitation, he yet again called upon the mountain-shaking bash. The image of the heavenly demon roared as Bai Xiaochun shot toward Xiao Qing, whose face instantly fell. He was rather frightened of this particular move of Bai Xiaochun's, especially considering how he was able to use it repeatedly. Gritting his teeth, he considered fleeing, but there were too many people blocking his path. A boom rang out as more than half of the group of pursuing Dharma protectors were sent staggering backward as they jointly diffused the energy of the attack. Even as that energy faded away, Bai Xiaochun was upon them, and miserable shrieks began to ring out. By the time Bai Xiaochun was fleeing again, another Foundation establishment cultivator had been killed. There Bai Xiaochun was, off in the distance, covered with blood, none of which was his own. Although a bit of blood was oozing out of the corners of his mouth, any injuries he had sustained were already healing. Although he was slightly out of breath, his two successive attacks in which no one could do anything to stop him, combined with his intense murderous aura and the fact that he was now soaked in blood, caused everyone who could see him to gasp in shock. None of them were even sure of how many divine abilities and magical techniques had hit him, and none of them had even slowed him down. His defenses were unimaginable. Not only had the combined efforts of everyone present failed to force him into retreat, he'd actually started attacking with even more power than before. Of course, this group of cultivators wasn't accustomed to fighting together, so their combined attacks weren't as powerful as one might imagine. However, it was still something that ordinary Foundation establishment cultivators shouldn't be able to fight back against. And yet, not only could Bai Xiaochun hold his own, he was bringing the fight to them. The fear in the hearts of the other Dharma protectors only continued to mount. Xiaoqing's eyes narrowed, and yet they still flickered with killing intent. Even as he snorted coldly in his heart, he looked over at Yang Hongwu and Zhang Yunshan. All three of them were clearly holding back, as if they were waiting for something. Even as the three of them exchanged a glance, two beams of light suddenly appeared off in the distance. Bai Xiaochun looked up silently, and dispersed the power of another mountain-shaking bash that he had been planning to unleash. It was Song Junwan and Shui Mei, both of whom looked like devilish gods as they glared at Bai Xiaochun. Song Junwan's face was ashen, and blood still caked the corners of her lips from the fighting with Shui Mei. Currently, the look on her face was one of confusion and mixed emotions. Next to her was Shui Mei, whose face was also caked with blood beneath her mask. A wound could be seen on the back of her right hand, from which blood qi leaked. Song Junwan had inflicted that wound with her blood sword, and although the injury seemed small, it had destabilized Shui Mei's cultivation base. Clearly, the fighting had taken its toll on Shui Mei, and yet her eyes still glittered with cold sinisterness as she stared at Bai Xiaochun. But then, she gritted her teeth for a moment and started laughing. As her laughter rang out, the 14th hour ran to a close, whereupon an indescribable feeling rose up in the world, as if a huge hand were pressing down on everything. Everything went still. Bai Xiaochun shivered. The other Dharma protectors were locked in place, unable to even think. They were now as motionless as statues. Only Song Junwan and Shui Mei seemed unaffected, apparently because of their glittering command medallions. A boundless will seemed to be comparing the two parties to determine who had won and who had lost. After a few breaths of time passed, the will seemed incapable of making a decision, and faded away. At the same time, something like a force of expulsion wrapped around the immobilized cultivators. Apparently, they were about to be expelled from the body of the blood ancestor. The time has come, Shui Mei declared. Thank you, Song Junwan, for bringing Night Crypt along. If it weren't for him, then I wouldn't be completely confident in being able to get the title of Bloodmaster, not even with my trump card. But now, with the keys gone, the position of Bloodmaster can go to no one except me. As her laughter echoed about, she looked over at Xiaoqing, Yang Hongwu, and Zhang Yunshan, and her smile was even visible on the surface of her mask. The power of expulsion which had gripped the three of them vanished, and they began to regain mobility. Although their movements were a bit stiff, all of them managed to produce something that only Song Junwan and Shui Mei should have: Bloodmaster command medallions. The Bloodmaster command medallions they had seemed somewhat faded, as if they couldn't quite match up to the command medallions possessed by Song Junwan and Shui Mei. However, the expressions on the faces of the three men were the same as before, as if they had been expecting this to happen. I'd originally planned for these three to join my group after the fighting for the keys concluded. That way, I could crush all of your Dharma protectors in one fell swoop. However, the current situation will result in the same outcome. Shui Mei laughed again, her eyes radiating coldness. Song Junwan almost couldn't believe what was happening. What gall you have, Shui Mei, she cried. Not only are you cheating, you're violating the most precious rules of the Bloodstream sect. She felt a bitterness that bordered on despair. Clearly, she had lost the struggle for the Bloodmaster position. The truth was, even if Night Crypt hadn't absorbed all of the keys, Shui Mei still would have cheated, still would have been able to delay Song Junwan on the ancient blood path, and still would have been the first person to reach the heart cavity. Once I'm the Bloodmaster, nobody will care about what happened in here. Besides, those 3 command medallions can be used to get onto the ancient blood path, but not the heart cavity. Shui Mei smiled as she looked up into the sky, where a vortex appeared. Rumbling could be heard as it opened up to reveal an ancient blood-colored path. The heart cavity lay at the end of that very path. Shui Mei blurred into motion as she headed toward the vortex. As for Xiaoqing, Yang Hongwu, and Zhang Yunshan, they also flew up into the air. Each one glanced over at Bai Xiaochun as they flew past, killing intent flickering within their eyes. Knowing that he wasn't important now, they snorted coldly as they closed in on the vortex. Song Junwan stood there quietly, her hands clenched into bitter fists of anger. She had lost. She hadn't even entered the ancient blood path yet, but if she did, Xiaoqing and the others would be able to pin her down. Shui Mei had everything under her control. Song Junwan simply couldn't accept the situation, and also flew up into the air. Even as she closed in on the vortex, a voice suddenly echoed into her ears. "There's no need to despair, Junwan." A tremor ran through Song Junwan, and her eyes shone with disbelief. Looking down at all of the figures who were fading away as they were expelled from the world, she saw Nightcrypt open his eyes. They looked like lightning flashing in the dark of night, lightning that could rip the heavens apart. Nightcrypt took a step forward, and then he was right next to her. "You," she said, panting. This sudden development was almost unbelievable. Voice cool, Bai Xiaochun stuck his chin up and said, "Like I said, I'm going to make sure you become the Bloodmaster." He was also surprised at what was happening. When the will had descended earlier, he immediately began to regain his senses, and was soon back to normal and able to see everything which had just occurred. Now, he flicked his sleeve and grabbed Song Junwan's arm as he shot toward the vortex. Song Junwan shivered, but did nothing to resist, and in fact, her eyes shone more brightly than ever. Although she had the feeling there was something very strange about Nightcrypt, she followed along, and the two of them became beams of bright light that shot toward the vortex. As soon as they entered, their vision swam, and everything vanished. Back in the blood wasteland, the vortex vanished, and the Dharma protectors all faded away. The third stage of the trial by fire was called the Ancient Blood Path. It was a long, cramped road, at the end of which was the heart cavity. Whoever entered that heart cavity first, of either Shui Mei or Song Junwan, would be the first to have a chance to acquire the blood crystal and become the Bloodmaster. Currently, Xiaoqing, Yang Hongwu, and Zhang Yunshan were materializing on the ancient blood path. When they solidified and looked around, Shui Mei was nowhere in sight, causing their eyes to widen. From what they remembered, Shui Mei had been right in front of them upon entering the vortex. Even as they looked around in surprise, the air up ahead of them began to twist and distort, and a figure materialized up ahead, a figure wearing a mask with a plum blossom on it. At first, Shui Mei seemed a bit out of sorts, but quickly recovered. After looking around, her eyes glittered, and she started making her way up the path. However, it was at that moment that Bai Xiaochun and Song Junwan appeared off to the side. Song Junwan quickly stepped forward to block Shui Mei's way. When Shui Mei realized that Song Junwan wasn't alone, her eyes widened. As for Xiaoqing, Yang Hongwu, and Zhang Yunshan, they also were taken aback. Nightcrypt, Bai Xiaochun stuck his chin up and looked around through narrowed eyes. "Hello, everyone. We meet again." When he noticed that Shui Mei's aura had stabilized, and her other wounds were gone, he was quite surprised. Even the wound on her right hand was nowhere to be seen, as if she had used some special healing method. What divine ability did she use to recover so quickly, he thought. Even the injury caused by Song Junwan's blood sword is gone. Amazing. Even as Bai Xiaochun stared in surprise, Shui Mei's eyes flickered with cold light. "Xiaoqing, you handle Nightcrypt. You other two, stop Song Junwan." With that, Shui Mei ignored Song Junwan and shot up the ancient blood path. Song Junwan was just about to try to stop her when Zhang Yunshan and Yang Hongwu pulled out powerful magical treasures and attacked, holding her back. Considering they had used counterfeit command medallions to enter the ancient blood path, if Shui Mei didn't become the Bloodmaster, and the sect leadership found out, they would likely be executed. Therefore, everything was on the line for them at the moment. "Do you people have a death wish?" Song Junwan said, her expression flickering. She considered trying to break away from them to pursue Shui Mei, but Yang Hongwu and Zhang Yunshan were unleashing the full power of their cultivation bases and magical treasures. The truth was, they weren't trying to kill her, they were simply trying to delay her, and their tactics were working. If they could hold her back for 10 breaths of time, the position of Bloodmaster would be secured. Shui Mei was already about 30 meters up the path, heading toward the end. Song Junwan was getting anxious, but even more anxious than her was Bai Xiaochun. "I can't let Shui Mei win," he thought. If she becomes Blood Master, not only will I lose the relic of eternal indestructibility, considering what's happened between us, she'll definitely use her power to get revenge on me. Having reached this point in his train of thought, Bai Xiaochun howled at the top of his lungs. The power of the heavenly demon body erupted out, and his aura surged. Bursting into motion, he unleashed the mountain-shaking bash, launching himself in the direction of Song Junwan, Yang Hongwu, and Zhang Yunshan. As he closed in, he reached out and shoved Song Junwan. "Get out of here, Junwan. Leave these guys to me." As his howl echoed out through the ancient blood path, he waved both hands into the air in front of him, unleashing a blast of power. The effects of the magical treasures slammed into him, and yet his momentum only seemed to build. Apparently, he was going to hold the line all by himself. It was a spectacular sight. The heavenly demon body roared, and fleshly body power erupted out. A wave of his hands caused Yang Hongwu and Zhang Yunshan's chi and blood to roil, and they staggered backward. "Night Crypt, are you looking to die?" Xiaoqing's eyes shone with piercing light, and as for Yang Hongwu and Zhang Yunshan, they were enraged. All three of them instantly pounced back for another attack. However, even as they were about to join forces, a strange light appeared in Bai Xiaochun's eyes, and he suddenly punched the ground. Boom! The ancient blood path trembled as mountain toppling, sea-draining force rippled out, forcing Yang Hongwu and Zhang Yunshan backward. Only Xiaoqing managed to close in on Bai Xiaochun, his expression grimly ferocious. "There were a lot of witnesses in the Blood Wasteland, so killing you might have caused some problems. But here, it's a different story. Since you're looking to die, Night Crypt, I'll just help you fulfill your wish." Xiaoqing laughed coldly as he closed in. He had been privy to Shui Mei's plan, and therefore, had never been very worried about the blood-colored keys. Back then, he hadn't been very focused on killing Night Crypt. It had been more of an impulse in the moment. But now there were no witnesses, and Night Crypt seemed to be asking to die. Therefore, Xiaoqing's killing intent surged. Bai Xiaochun suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot, his veins of steel pulsing. "You know, that's the same thing I was just gonna say. It doesn't matter what tricks you have up your sleeve, you're going to die, beyond the shadow of a doubt." Xiaoqing extended his right hand, and his two fingers made the shape of a sword. Blinding, blood-colored light spilled out, creating sword chi that shot toward Bai Xiaochun's forehead. Powerful cultivation-based fluctuations erupted out, creating something like burning fire that could consume anything in its path. However, even as he closed in, Bai Xiaochun raised his right hand with indescribable speed. He made a grasping motion in the direction of Xiaoqing's throat, and a gravitational force grabbed a hold of the man. It was none other than something that Bai Xiaochun hadn't used even once since arriving at the Bloodstream sect. It was the throat-crushing grasp. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.